Jephthah is one of the most obscure figures in the Bible, yet he is the protagonist in two important stories. These stories are found in the book of Judges, one of those books most of us read rarely, if ever. Since the stories are both so striking, I'll talk about the first one today and leave the second for tomorrow. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Thursday, August 3rd, 2023. I call Jephthah the unfortunate one, since his life circumstances were indeed tragic. He was the illegitimate son of Gilead and a prostitute. And because of this, he was shunned by the rest of Gilead's family, and he fled into the otherwise unknown land of Tov. There, he gathered with a band of outlaws who went with him on raids. Not exactly the making of a biblical hero. But the elders of his home region later sought him out to take on the military role of commander when Israel faced attack by the Ammonites. Apparently, they now considered his outlaw status to be a strength as they faced the Ammonite threat. As you might imagine, Jephthah's reaction to their request was decidedly cool. "Are you not the very ones," he asked, "who rejected me and drove me out of my father's house? So why do you come to me now when you are in trouble?" But in the end, Jephthah consented to lead their army with the stipulation that they take him back into their fold. Now, Jephthah did not immediately go into battle with the Ammonites. He began with a series of negotiations carried out through messengers sent back and forth between Jephthah and the Ammonites. It is always a good thing to know why someone wants to wage war against you. Generally better to settle a dispute through diplomatic means, only resorting to war when diplomacy fails. So Jephthah sends a messenger to the Ammonites to find out what their complaint is all about. As is so often the case, it boils down to a land dispute. From the Ammonites' perspective, the Israelites had illegally taken Ammonite land when they came into the Promised Land. Jephthah explains that the Israelites had taken no one's land illegally. He carefully explains how they had sought permission to travel through both Edom and Moab on their way to the Promised Land, only to be denied permission, and being a reasonable people, they obeyed both the Edomite and Moabite kings and kept looking for a suitable route into the Promised Land. That's where the dispute with the Ammonites starts. When the children of Israel had come to the land now in dispute, it belonged to the Amorites. Following the same pattern, they sought permission to go through the land, only to be rebuffed once again, this time by the king Sihon, the Amorite leader. But Sihon didn't just deny them permission, he actively attacked the Israelites. And in the ensuing conflict, says Jephthah, God had given the land over to the Israelites. Not only had Sihon failed to push the Israelites away from his border, but in fighting them, he actually lost his lands to them. By now, says Jephthah, the lands have been in the possession of Israel for some 300 years. Why now, he asks, do the Ammonites want to lay claim to it? It's really a case of squatters' rights. Israel staked a claim to it, a claim that had not been challenged for 300 years. But Jephthah's logic proved unpersuasive, and he resolved, the Ammonites did, to attack the Israelites. Now, Jephthah does something that will come back to haunt him. He makes a vow to God. If God will give him victory over the Ammonites, Jephthah will make a sacrifice to God. If you give the Ammonites into my hand, he says, then whoever comes out the doors of my house to meet me when I return victorious from the Ammonites shall be the Lord's, to be offered up by me as a burnt offering. Bad idea. For God does indeed give Jephthah a resounding victory over the Ammonites. But when he returns to his house after the battle is over, who should walk out the door but his beloved only child, his young daughter? Now, I don't know about you, but I believe I would try to renegotiate the terms of the deal with God. But apparently making a vow to God was something that he didn't take lightly and felt he couldn't take back. His daughter accepts her fate asking only that she be allowed to wander in the mountains with a group of her friends in order, as the text says, to bewail her virginity. And unbelievably, after completing her 2 months of mourning, she returns to her father, who did with her, says the text, according to the vow he had made. Jephthah's return to his home after having been a castaway and his victory over the Ammonites has come at a steep and tragic cost. He is indeed perhaps the most unfortunate hero of the Bible. Or is he a hero? It's hard for us to discern anything valuable or redeeming about this story. Are we to laud Jephthah for sticking to his vow? Did God really accept such a sacrifice? This is one of those ambiguous stories that we're not sure what to do with. It is certainly clear from the law, the Torah, that God does not require human sacrifice, and in fact, God forbids it. Ironically, what Jephthah has done is actually more in line with Ammonite religious practice than with Jewish practice. Some commentators even use this episode as an illustration of the larger theme of Judges, which is the progressive idolatry into which the people constantly fall. So in spite of the fact that this is a story of Israel's victory over the Ammonites, it is also an example of the idolatry that keeps creeping into their camps. It is, as I say, a deeply ambiguous story. Let me be clear, though. There is nothing ambiguous about Jephthah's sacrifice of his daughter. It was wrong, and it was evil. At the same time, it is a story of God's faithfulness in the face of human faithlessness. Tomorrow, we finish the story of Jephthah when we learn the importance of the word shibboleth. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.